Welcome into the Fun Astrology Podcast for Tuesday, September 27th. I have a great little story I'm going to share with you today. Let's take a look at one aspect in the sky. It's a kissing cousin of what we talked about yesterday. Mercury in retrograde is trining Pluto. Now remember yesterday, Venus did the same thing. So everything we talked about yesterday with Venus, you just apply to Mercury's characteristics. So that would be communication. And I always like to roll in there, remember, the most important communication you have every day is with yourself. What other areas could we apply with this? Well, technology. Mercury's in retrograde. That's always good if you can for a technology break. Trining Pluto would take a look at how you use it on a regular basis. And is there something there that needs to be transformed? I've realized that everything I do basically involves a screen of some sort. So part of what I've started doing several weeks back is just really being conscious of how much time per day and getting away from it intentionally, turning it off. And that means some work doesn't get done today. But there's a definite tailwind behind that today. All right. So listen to yesterday if you didn't catch it to get the full spectrum of that, what it means to be trining Pluto. And then we can apply it to those areas of Mercury. Oh, sure. Travel. Yes. Transportation. Absolutely. What would you say would transform there? How about the way you drive? Maybe take a different route to work today. Maybe if you're a slow driver, well, maybe pick it up a little bit, although I think being slow right now is not a bad thing. Or if you are typically a little bit heavy-footed, try just letting it breathe. Slow it down a little bit. Just vary it up. Whatever your pattern is, play with it. See if there's, like we talked about yesterday, a higher ground. How can you live on your highest timeline in those areas around Mercury? Quick plug for our Discord channel. You can go over there and find Kristen's new weekly lunar calendar graphics. Fun Astrology Podcast in Discord. Free to join, free to download. Now, let me tell you this kind of fun story that happened last week. I went into Asheville and had a few errands to run. That was the duty part, and then I played a little bit. And in one of the stores that I played in, I saw something that caught my little gleam in my eye there, and I thought, that would be fun. I'm not going to say what it was, but just to say that there was this personal object that I looked at that I thought, that would be so fun. And was it necessary? No. I have lived 62 years without it. I could live another 62 and not miss it. But it would just be fun, right? Well, I was struggling because it was not a cheap item. So I didn't want to be casual about it. See, there's some transformation. Like instead of being undisciplined and just plopping out a credit card and say, worry about it later, I was being responsible. And I was thinking it through. And I was asking Source for guidance on whether I should do this. I have a couple of processes. One comes from Fred Dodson's book, The Intuitive Awareness Method. That is a great little process that once you practice and get in tune with, that's something that guides me regularly, is constantly playing with that technique. And you can hear about it. It's a very quick, short little audio book that you can get very, very fast. And if you pick it up, it helps support the show, too. So definitely a great technique and a benefit to the podcast. So both appreciated. And then I do a little muscle testing technique. We have Fred's muscle testing technique on our Facebook group right now, Fun Astrology Podcast listeners. And so I do the combination of that. And what I was getting was, with the muscle testing and the intuitive awareness method, like it was neutral. Rarely is muscle testing kind of yes and no. It's usually yes or no. This one was saying yes, and it was saying no. The intuitive method was leaning to no, but there was room for yes. And that was kind of strange, too, because usually it's either a really down, sinking feeling, or it's a lighter, more up feeling, but this time it was just in the middle. So I walked away from it, and then as I was outside, I thought, cast a chart, cast a horary chart. So I did. Now, the thing about horary is you make sure that you know which house rules the question. And for this, it was the fifth house. It was a recreational item, so it was fifth house, definitely. I looked at all the other qualifiers, and yes, the question could be answered. So then you look at the house fifth house, as I mentioned, what sign is on the cusp of the fifth house? In this case, it was Aries. Aries is ruled by Mars. Mars is currently in Gemini. Now, that's kind of interesting because that's the answer to the question. And with Mars, the planet answering the question is in the twin house, and I was getting two answers. I'm telling you, folks, you cannot make this stuff up. All right, then what you do is you look across the chart at the other sign that's on the opposite house, which in this case would have been the 11th house, and that was Libra because it's obviously the opposite sign to Aries, and that is ruled by Venus, which is in Virgo. Then what you do is you determine, is there a Ptolemaic aspect between those two planets? So in other words, conjunction, opposition, square, sextile, or trine. Just those. You don't worry about the minor aspects. Is there a Ptolemaic aspect between the ruler of the fifth house, Mars, and the ruler of the 11th house, Venus? Yes, they are in a Ptolemaic aspect of a square. So the answer to my question, which was, should I buy this item? The answer was no. So I was like, okay, done deal. I trust the chart. And here's one thing is, I don't ever now, I trust it so much that if I am going to engage a chart for a question, it's going to be a really important question. First of all, it's going to be something that I am asking for divine guidance on that question. And it is certainly something that I am not using it as a suggestion. If I'm going to pull that thing out, I've seen this way too many times, that if I'm going to ask, I'm going to do what it says. But sometimes we humans just have to have a second look, or we have to, are you sure? And all of this. So about, I don't know, I left. That was it. I mean, the first time I saw no, that was it. But then I came back about 30 minutes later. I was still in town, and I thought, just look at the money side of it. Look at the second house. Should I spend this money on this item? And that answer was no. So I was like, okay, I am done here. Put it out of my mind and went back home. Well, that night I went up on the mountain to watch the sunset. And on the way down the mountain, I hear this grinding noise in my wonderful miracle Jeep. And I knew that the brakes were needing to be replaced. I thought my deal with the dealership was that they had told me that they would last until December. No, the hills around here got them. So the brakes were going out on the Jeep. Do you know, when I took it to the dealership the next morning and got the brakes fixed, that the cost of the repair, I'm not kidding you here, was literally exactly the same amount of money as the item would have been if I had purchased the day before. And I will tell you that getting hit with that extra expense right there would have been, I mean, certainly I could have dug out of it, but it would have, it would have been a financial hit. So I was definitely thankful at that moment. I raised my eyes up to the sky and I said, thank you. And I actually pulled my phone out where I still had the chart from the day before, and I said, thank you. Thank you so much. I'll tell you, you can trust this stuff, you guys. It is truly amazing. It is truly amazing. And then we had another situation with a friend over the weekend that I did the same thing with, got the same answers, and it was incredibly helpful in that situation as well. So it's like, wow, it is an incredible thing that we are studying together. Have a great one. We're going to take a listener question tomorrow. It's on SpeakPipe. If you'd like to leave one for later in the week, do it. It's funastrology.com. Up at the top on the left, the orange button. Would be glad to hear from you. Take care.